Yack.
You're listening to Yack. Yack is the official podcast of the AAF Greater Lehigh Valley Ad Club. Our mission is to inspire creativity and enhance the professional development of the advertising and marketing communities where we live and work. I'm your host, Bill Childs, and I'll talk with artists, designers, writers, directors, photographers, along with those who work in a creative capacity. Our aim here is to serve as a creative resource to help you stay informed, entertained, and above all, inspired. But first, I want to thank ASR Media. We appreciate your support and collaboration. All right, Yackers. Today, I get to talk to someone whose work I have admired for quite some time. She is not only the owner of an ad agency, but she understands the importance of giving back to the community where she lives and works. She named her agency after an antelope known for being extremely fast, agile, and able to clear tall hurdles that get in their way. I'm talking about Sarah Clark of Kudu Creative. I first met Sarah in 2013 when she was an art director at Mosaic Interactive, a digital agency. We yacked it up on several topics, including client pitch meetings that go sideways and her involvement in the Easton Mural Project. I also learned during our conversation that Sarah played 3 instruments growing up, and we dive into the profound impact music can have on both the player and the listener, as well as her approach to idea generating and how she still makes time to design while running the day-to-day operations of her agency. I was surprised by her insights about artificial intelligence when I brought the topic up. We talked about where she sees the technology going and how, if used correctly, it can be a game changer. Before opening her agency, Sarah studied graphic design at Minnesota State University. She worked as a web designer for Flint Communications in Fargo, North Dakota, and was an art director at Mosaic Interactive. She then decided to venture out on her own and open Kudu in September 2014. Just like her agency's name implies, she's always on the move, which is why Sarah loves the many roles she gets to inhabit: agency owner, designer, marketing strategist, entrepreneur, and above all, mom to her 2 sons. Here is my Yack with Sarah Clark. Okay. Good morning, Sarah Clark. How are you?
Good morning, Bill. I'm doing well this morning, despite the gloomy weather. How are you?
I'm all right. Welcome to Yack. Glad to have you here.
Hey, glad to be here.
So let's get started. I want to talk about, we have a lot of things I want to talk about with you, but let's start where, what led you to a creative life? That's where I want to start.
Oh my gosh. Well, a creative life. I discovered graphic design in community college. I was creative in the sense of music throughout middle school and high school. So I played 3 instruments and was into history and literature, and then went to a community college and discovered graphic design, which in hindsight was not graphic design. And I got to Photoshop myself jumping over the Grand Canyon. And then I was like, this could be a job. You could make a living doing this.
Well, if it wasn't graphic design, what was it? You said it wasn't graphic design. What would you call it?
Decoupaging digitally.
Oh, okay. Okay.
We were just putting images together, clipping them out, arranging them, assembling them. And she would give us assignments where it would be a desert so it'd be random objects that you would have to put together in a composition. But I guess, essentially that is graphic design.
Sure. You're taking graphics and you're designing. Yeah. So 3 instruments. I'm fascinated now by this. What 3 instruments?
The clarinet, the oboe, and the flute.
Okay. A lot of research that says people who play instruments do better in school, are smarter, are better at like teamwork, are better at collaboration, just all around, just better people, like kids who play instruments, students who play instruments, and adults who play instruments. You're using. That's why I always get upset when I hear about school programs and the first thing they cut is the music program or the art program. So. Did you kind of feel any of that, experience any of that? Did you think it made you a better student by playing 3 instruments?
Well, I don't know if it made me a better student, but I do agree that it should be a part of a well-rounded human being because it's a different language, just like,
Hmm.
in advertising, coding up websites, it's a different language. It's a different type of communication. And graphic design, it's visual. So music is different. And I think the more a person experiences those different forms of
Hmm.
language, and communication, the better. So uh, I hope it made me better. I don't know.
Okay, all right, but what? So most people, most are lucky enough to play one instrument. So how did you kind of bring on what made you want to bring three in? Like how did that work? How'd that happen?
Well, my primary instrument was clarinet. So when you start to play an instrument for long enough, you then can venture off to another instrument that's very similar.
Okay.
The music is similar. Maybe the finger positions are similar. So like the oboe is very similar to the clarinet.
Mm.
The flute, I was just always fascinated by because, it was right next to us. My best friend played the flute,
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
that one I just decided to, learn because it was interesting.
Are you using any of those skills kind of in your job now, your work now? Does it make you, are you better at selecting music choices for, ads that you have to put together or TV spots or, I'm just trying to find how that dot connects to now.
Yeah, I mean, I love music. I listen to music when I design.
Mm.
In my free time, I love to see live music. So I would see music helps me in that aspect. But in terms of like reading it and playing it, how it's helped me in my career would be to understand, do software research, right? Because if
Hmm.
you have, because a lot of it just builds on top of one another.
Right.
And then you can weigh the pros and cons and then weigh that with kind of what goals are you setting out to achieve?
Hmm. Hmm.
So I don't know. For me, it's just yeah, it's something that builds upon something. If you understand those foundational questions and answers, then you know what comes next.
Right. Right. I think one of the things that for me that was happened to me as I got older, as I got, farther down the road into my career. I don't exactly know when it happened, but I started to understand that everything connects. All of it connects. Like you know what I mean? Like you have math and geometry to design, to art, to architecture, music, rhythm, balance, like all of those things. It's everywhere. It's all connected. That was really kind of like an eye opener for me. It was when I was studying with Myron Barnstone, who teaches a classical approach. I had his daughter on the podcast 2 episodes ago, and he just kind of showed me a whole new world. Which had I known that geometry played so much of a role in nature and art, I think I would have been a little bit better at math, or I would have wanted to like learn more about math, right? Where I avoided it.
I'm with you. I am
I
totally with you there.
I was like, oh my God, wait a second. Math is kind of like art. It's art. It's an art form. And then you start to realize, like, there anything you do, you can bring art into it. It doesn't matter, right? That's what was like for me, the big like eye-opening moment was it's like it doesn't matter if you're a chef, if you're a writer. Obviously the arts are the one, the obvious ones where like there's art, but you can bring a level of art into anything. Baking a pumpkin pie, like if you're going to be somebody that really wants to make the world's best pumpkin pie, you're going to figure out how to do that. And I talked about this on the one podcast with Matt Ardinger about how anybody can make a decent pumpkin pie, right? We all can have the same type of ingredients. You get a recipe, but there's that extra 10% that people go that make it extraordinary, that take it from ordinary to extraordinary. And to me, that's what I've been in the pursuit of in the past, like say maybe 10 years, is just really looking for those extraordinary things and kind of like mastery, like trying to just, mastery in advertising, in teaching, anything that you take on, you can bring up. Making a cup of
Writing.
coffee, right? Making coffee, think about that, like the water that you use, the grinds that you use, the pours that you use. So talk to me a little bit about that, because I just think that I don't know if a lot of people are kind of living that way or thinking about that way, have that mindset about bringing mastery to pretty much anything you want to work on.
Yeah, I think it starts with a curiosity, right? And then just
Mm-hmm.
keep discovering, exploring, and digging. And before you know it, you're roasting your own beans and grinding your own coffee, just for
Exactly.
that
Exactly.
moment of zen in the morning. And,
Uh-huh.
you know,
That's what I'm talking about.
the warm
And it's
nuttiness.
right, right. And it's fascinating. I wrote a column once about this pumpkin pie that I had at this place in King of Prussia called J. Alexander's. And it I was there with a guy named Ed Harris, and he had said to me, he said, "Hey, by the way, you should try the pumpkin pie." And I was like, "Well, okay. I'm not a big dessert person, but I like a decent slice of pumpkin pie." He's like, "It's the best pie you'll ever have." And I said, "Really? The best?" He's like, "It's the best." And I said, "Okay, I got to try this pie." And they brought it out, and I took a bite of it, and I had to put the fork down because I had to like compose myself. I was having a moment. It was like I mean, I couldn't stop thinking about this pie for a year, Sarah, a year. And then I'm like, I need to write about this. So I wrote
You try to
about,
recreate it?
no, I wouldn't
Okay.
even attempt. I wouldn't
No.
even attempt. I know my limits.
What made it extraordinary? What
Well,
was
that's
it?
what I don't, I can't
The
explain
crust?
because it was baked with someone who really cared about how that pumpkin pie tasted. There's no way that pie was baked by someone who hates their job or who is disgruntled or who just is going through the motions. There's
Hmm.
no way. There's no way. It was phenomenal. I wrote the column. I it I put it into it's in the book that I just finished. What I learned about what a slice of pumpkin pie can teach you about mastery. And then that's when I kind of in doing the research, that's when I started realizing like, mastery can be in anything. It just what do you want to what do you want to make it? Yeah, but I do agree with you. It starts with curiosity. Now, can you teach that? Can you teach someone to be curious, or do you think like you just inherently are curious? Kids are naturally curious, but I think we lose a little bit of that as adults, right?
Yeah, I think it's something you should probably hone early on.
Mm-hmm.
Just everything's easier that way. But yeah, curiosity. Yeah, for me, mastery, oh gosh. Now that it's starting to warm up, I want to master a couple Jersey hills on my
Mm.
bicycle.
Okay.
That's something that I've picked up over the last few years that I didn't do before, just something new. Um, and it's pushed me from a curiosity of, what's this like to
Mm-hmm.
then, getting a entry level bike like a cycle cross and then just exploring trails, noting them. The DNL is great for that,
Right. Sure.
and then finding groups. I found a group of people who also cycle,
Mm.
awesome people. And then they showed me their routes and their paths. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So then that makes you want to discover your own. Well, it made me want to discover my own anyways. So I'm looking forward to that. Unfortunately, it's raining today, but hopefully we
Right.
can
Right.
get some nice weather. But yeah, I would say mastery of taking something from the unknown to exploring it, understanding it, and then like I'm going to say it like design, it's like you have to push the limits to understand what the limits are to know that when you create something, you're playing within the guidelines of like what makes a delicious pumpkin pie, but it's that roasted nutmeg or
Yeah.
it's that beautiful sunset at the top of that hill that overlooks the valley, those moments of pure joy and
Yep.
pure bliss that passes through whatever it is that you're creating or you're doing. And it William Morris who wrote a excerpt on like how an artist is happy when they create art. It passes the energy through the art,
Mm.
and then it'll make the other person happy or the
Mm-hmm.
environment, whatever it is, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you're right. I think there was probably somebody doing something different with nutmeg. It wasn't just, and and we all have that capability, I think, within us and it's in reach, but look, there's deadlines to meet. There's, bills to pay. And a lot of times that can kind of get pushed to the wayside because we're trying to get a lot done. So let me ask you this. Let's turn the corner a little bit on this. Walk me through your journey into agency owner. I mean, you're the owner of Kudu Creative. So how does that happen? How did you what was that journey?
That was fun. You don't make money for like a couple years, so brace yourself for that.
Okay.
No, being an agency owner for me, it's something that I always knew that I was going to do, right? Because I followed design, I followed designers,
Hmm.
and I saw that like the most successful designers were doing their own design shops, whether it be boutique or in a small team with other designers or creatives,
Hmm.
copywriters,
Sure.
photographers, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so it's something that I've seen, I've noticed, and something that I identified with, and I thought that would maybe be my path.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Okay.
then, but there's so much that you don't know, right?
Hmm.
And you have to figure that out. So I, put myself through a couple experiences just to better understand, meet people. When I moved to the Lehigh Valley, Dennis A. Miller and Mike Drabenstadt over at, it was called Spark at the time,
Hmm.
were some of the first creatives I met in the Valley.
Okay.
And then I met you not too far after.
Okay. Right. When you were
So
at Mosaic?
yep,
Okay.
yep.
Yep. I
So
remember that.
Mosaic was more interactive, and then when I was working with Spark, that was more, design, graphic design, as I was doing as a um, just a
Yeah.
regular, just a print designer.
Okay.
And I wanted to marry the two. And after Mosaic, I was like, I think the time is now. I think I can do this now.
Okay.
Um, and I did. I rented a uh, like an office space in the Carl Sterner Arts Building, with another woman who was also starting up her own business. So
Mm.
we split rent and started up our businesses, and then got a couple clients, and then from there, I moved to a larger space in the building,
Hmm.
and then also had a another business called Easton Coworks, where I rented a desk to independent contractors, freelancers, um, and that covered overhead, and I kept getting more clients. And
Hmm.
then, yeah, and then it just got off the ground about 3 years. And then I bought a building in the West Ward because I wanted to have my own design shop, boutique and space.
Okay.
So yeah.
Well, there's a
So
myth. There's a thing called the E myth. It's the entrepreneurial myth, and it's when, let's say you're a bricklayer and you're like, I'm really good at bricklaying and I want to lay bricks for a living. So you start a business laying bricks, right? But what ends up happening is you don't lay the bricks. You hire other people to lay the bricks. So you're out like talking to clients, you're doing the taxes, and you're like thinking to yourself, wait a minute, like I just want to lay bricks, but now I'm like I have a business where other people lay bricks and I'm just overseeing it. Can you talk to that? Have you found that to be true, or do you still get to do some design? Do you still get to work on design, or are you kind of like looking for the next client, handling the clients that you have, approvals, revisions, doing those types of things that maybe when you thought you were going to start your own shop, you'd be more just designing. I don't know. Talk to me about that.
yeah, unfortunately, taxes is something that I didn't really think about doing
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
until, you become an entrepreneur and a business owner. So I would say that unfortunately does take some time. There's
Sure.
other times too, like business development. I'm spending a lot of time doing that. I take meetings with the clients. I understand what their business goals are. I create a creative brief. I then give it to my right hand woman, a graphic designer who we work so well together. And I can't tell you how important it is to have a designer who you speak the same language, you're good collaborators together. You can give a creative brief,
Hmm.
they can take it and run with it.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say I don't design as much as I did, unfortunately, though I would love to walk in the doors and just do design all day. I do more, like I said, it's a mix.
Yeah.
It's the business aspect of it for the most part. And then the creative part of it is it's smaller, but
I mean, but you still have to know it. I mean, because you're obviously going to be looking at it before it goes to the client, so you still have to kind of that keeps you kind of in the realm of that world, right?
yeah. And when my designer makes logos, I'll throw a couple in the ring too.
Mm-hmm.
I'll
Mm-hmm.
take a look at hers and I'll say, okay, here's a couple other options that might be a different direction that they might go in. So I do still keep my design saw sharp, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, a lot of it is laying bricks and um, directing.
Yeah, directing other people laying bricks. Well, let me ask you this. What advice would you give to, maybe someone, in college or getting ready to graduate or just recently graduated who, are thinking about, their role, in this field and advertising and design and, marketing and what kind of traits do you think you need in order to start your own thing, to be your own boss, to kind of plant a flag and say, I'm going to do this? What type of traits did you need, or do you feel you had that helped you start your business? And would you recommend someone else do it as well?
Yeah, I think if you have a passion and a vision, definitely go after that, whatever it might be. For me, it was design. For other people, it could be other things, but that'll carry you through how long it's going to take to build up to a point where you are that agency owner, because it just doesn't happen overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Really do have to go through each one of those steps of whether it be working in a full service advertising agency, a boutique design firm, interactive shop. The more experiences you have, the more you understand different aspects of the design, and you also understand different business structures as well. So, and then the strategies behind them. So yeah, I would say definitely put yourself, if you're just graduating college and you're getting into the marketing advertising agency, hopefully by that point you would have done a couple internships to understand what
Mm-hmm.
direction of design you want to go. Because like I said, you could work in a full service marketing advertising agency. You could be an in-house designer at Target. You could take it in whatever path you wanted. So if you have an inclination as what direction you want to go, you have to have that passion and that drive to take you there, of
Sure.
course. But if design is what you do and how you lead your life, then it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. What do you like most about what you do on a daily basis?
Um, I like, gosh, I don't know. I think it's talking to other people, like sitting here chatting with you on
Mm-hmm.
a Saturday morning, drinking coffee. Um, I like that I can stop into your class and talk to other kids about like
Mm-hmm.
design and advertising and what they're into. I like that the people I work with on a daily basis, my clients, are really just cool, understanding. They bring the right attitude. Um, it's really nice to see everybody swimming in the same motion. And that's what I love about my job. And not that sometimes there comes a situation that you have to overcome. I believe one of the questions you had for me
Mm-hmm.
was um, how you deal with uh,
Rejection.
rejection. Yeah. And if that does happen, you really just have to think of, like, in business, what is the objective, right? So if there's rejection happening, did it miss the did it miss the mark? Did it miss the
Mm-hmm.
target? It's
Sure.
it's a learning experience. So the more you get those rejections, it's the more you have to learn about yourself and whatever you're going through. So
Oh
to
yeah.
me,
Yeah.
yeah, It might
Yeah.
suck sometimes, don't get me wrong, but
Mm-hmm.
there's I
Especially when, you know, like you put the work in, you followed the brief, you know, you talked to the client, you understood the problem they're trying to solve, and you know, look, you know, you're going to present what you believe is going to be the best option to say to solve their problem, right?
Mhm.
Or you know, increase their sales, or you know, increase their brand, or you know, all that stuff that we do. And there's just sometimes where you know you nailed it. I mean, I have hundreds of stories where I know this was the right direction, and they didn't go for it, and it's
What
hard. It's hard.
what can you tell me like a little example about that?
Yeah,
I
I'll give
would
you an example. Sure.
okay.
I remember. Do you remember? There's brand's still around. I mean, it was around for 100 years, but it closed up suddenly a couple years ago. A Treat Soda. Do you remember A Treat?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
it
I
was
do.
like kind of like a Lehigh Valley like
Yeah,
staple tradition. I drank it as a kid, and excuse me, one of the things that I knew about A Treat was their flavors were the best. They had the best flavors, and they had
great.
some really funky ones. They had like, you know, this was before like everyone else was making pineapple, and you know, they just had really cool. They even had one called Big Blue. It looks like almost like windshield washer fluid, but like kids love that stuff, right? So they had closed down, and then Jandal bought them. Jandal Turkey Farm or Jandal Farms bought A Treat and was going to bring the brand back. So I was at the morning call at the time, and I got asked if I could come up with something, like me and my team, come up with something for to present to A Treat. So my without this was without talking to the client. I was just kind of, it was going to be a spec kind of campaign. So I immediately went to the flavors, and I thought, okay, that feels like there's something there. Their flavors, they're known for their flavors. Their cream soda, their sarsaparilla, their root beer, their grape, their pineapple, their cherry, all of the cool stuff, right?
Mm.
And I thought of this approach of writing flavor personalities. So if I'm a cream soda, where would I go? Where would I hang out? What would I do? Who
You
would I
definitely have orange hair if you're a cream soda.
what's that?
Definitely have orange hair if you're a cream
Right. Like
soda.
what would that person look like? So the cut line became flavors with personality,
Mhm.
right? That was the cut line. And then I just kind of put myself in the grape. If I'm a grape soda, who am I? Right? I'm kind of like the crazy uncle. I'm like the uncle that everybody likes to hang out with that says weird things and always has the best jokes because grape, it's just grape soda. But then when it was like ginger ale, I was like, you know, I'm an American classic. I help people feel good, right? Because remember when you're like sick and you're a kid, your mom gives you ginger ale. I help
Yeah.
people feel good. I like to mix things. I like to mix things up, right? So just all these like kind of funny kind of things. And I was really happy with how this turned out. Then I worked with my designers. We did a bunch of campaign ads that would go along with that. And I thought, boy, you could cast people that sound like those things. Like picture like someone sounding like a Sam Elliott could be the root beer or the sarsaparilla, right? Um,
The sarsaparilla.
you could just have so much fun with this, and I was really happy with this. And I got a chance to present to A Treat, right? So
Nice.
go into the room. They're there, and they were working with an agency at the time, and this was the most awkward pitch I've ever been on. The agency was in the room. The agency was in the room watching me pitch to their client. It was, let's just say, it was awkward. Okay, so I had to push all that aside and just present the idea and see what would happen. And um, yeah, I read all the flavor personalities. I talked about how it could all be different voices. You could do different Facebook pages. You could have people like associating with, you know, I think the cut line too was like I'm an A Treat cream and I'm a flavor with personality. So it was kind of like you could bring the soda name in. Um, I had cream thinking she was the most popular. I'm the most popular. Everyone loves me. I get invited to the best parties. Everyone wants to hang out with me, like that kind of, like it was fun. It was just so much fun because it's soda, right? What are you going to say about, and this was one thing that they could own the flavors. And nope, I don't even
They
know the
didn't want to
reason.
do it.
Never even got a reason why. I just
I'm sold. I want a cream soda.
they said wow, the comment was wow, you worked really hard on this. I went, yeah, I did. We did. And then
What
I
did
had
the
to leave the
marketing
room.
agency say?
What? No, it was
Oh,
one of the owners of Jandal said that to me. Said you were. He leaned over and quietly to me said, "You worked really hard on this."
yeah.
And I
Well,
said,
that's
"Yeah, I
good.
did." So, do you want to know what they used instead?
Wow.
You ready for this?
Yeah, I'm ready.
A treat is back. That's what they
All
used.
right.
So I was like, okay.
It's pretty
So
safe.
so flavors with personality, no. A treat is back. Okay. So that was one, as you can tell, stings a little bit. And it's been like 5 years. It's been like 5 years ago. So that's where how, for me, like you just gotta, I guess you just gotta move on. You just gotta say they didn't see it, they didn't get it. But I felt that I could have we could have had fun with that. We could have had fun with they could have had fun with that campaign. They could have had, I mean, radio spots. What was the one trying to think what the one flavor was. I can't remember what it was. It could have been I tried to picture the soda, the flavor, and then who someone famous would be that I could, like Sarsaparilla was obviously Sam Elliott. So I had his voice in my head. And then it becomes like, just again, like where would this soda hang out? Like,
The
yeah,
dude
it
would
was
be like
fun.
a vanilla soda.
I don't know if there was a vanilla.
No.
Yeah. I feel like that was fun. So do you have any like that? Do you have any stories that, you could keep the names out of it if you want, but just like kind of where, it's just like, oh man, this is it. This is what you guys should be doing. Like, let's do this. Let's have, because any type of advertising, good advertising or great advertising, is going to involve a risk. You're going to have to take a risk, right? You want to try to minimize all the risks, but I didn't see anything in there that was offensive. It wasn't anything, it wasn't like, it was just fun. It was kitschy. I thought it was clever.
I think it's very clever. It's exciting. It puts personality to the flavors. I mean, that's going to develop wonderful brand recognition when they go to the grocery store and they see all of
Mm-hmm.
it on the shelf or whatever. Yeah, more so than a treat is back. Oh, it's back. I know it was anticipated because it's a local
Mm-hmm.
uh, icon. So everybody was very excited for it to come back.
Absolutely. Sure, sure. Here was
But
another one I did. I took their name. They have a mask. They had the name A dash treat, right? So this
mhm.
was, I had a secondary kind of thing if they didn't like the flavors of personality. And what I did was I separated the words A and treat, and I inserted like handwritten words like A memorable treat, A flavorful treat, A whatever, keep going. I mean, you just put like a whole bunch of things in. So that was kind of like a secondary, but once they didn't like flavors with personality, I don't think they were going to like that one either. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Well, what can you do, right?
just move on. Yep.
Just move on. Yeah. No, I do have a couple cases where I've experienced that for sure. I
Well, and it
find that
has to be harder, Sarah, when, think about it. I was at the morning call. So the morning call didn't say to me, hey, that A Treat campaign didn't sell. You don't get paid this week. I still got
yeah.
paid, right? But as an agency owner, there's a more riding on that. There's more, you're walking away, without, and especially you invested some time, you invested some money, you kind of nailed it. And then you have to walk away, and kind of watch, you know, you know what I mean? What I'm trying to say is there's more involved there when you're an agency owner pitching something like that than me working at a media company.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I would say that kind of the first step of that happens is when you write a proposal. If
Mm-hmm.
you don't win the proposal, then good, you're done. But if you do get your foot in the door and you experience, rejection or them saying, no, you're missing the mark, you're going in a different direction, we're going in a different direction. Um, yeah, it does kind of like it makes you question, hey, why would they choose that?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have your mind set on kind of what would best be the solution.
Well,
Um,
and keep in mind too, like I took a shot in the dark. Like it wasn't like I wasn't part of a an RFP where we were kind of like this is where they were saying to us, this is what we want, this is what we need, this is what we're hoping for. I just threw it
you
against the wall, thought and hoped it would stick, but it didn't. So
you shoot your shot, you know,
Yeah.
and that's what you have to do as a creative. It's a risk, you know, and just by doing that, you know, what was the next risk you took, and did that one pan out? Probably, you
Well,
know.
the other client that I worked with a lot when I was at the agency that we just had that synergy was Plantique. I did a lot of work with Mike McShane when he was the president and CEO of Plantique, and we just elevated that brand to a whole other level, because we didn't just make it about showing the beautiful landscapes. We made it about more than that. We made it about like the artistry that went into it.
Nice.
You know, the cut line we came up with them was we create beautiful landscapes. It's in our nature. So we leaned into the natural, the nature aspect, and just it just we had so much fun with that account. He really let us do a lot of kind of like cool different type stuff. I remember the one time we did a 3-page ad in Lehigh Valley Style, which if you look at the name Plantique, two of the things that they do are already in their name. So the one page of the ad just had the word plan, right? So they put plans together, they design, they have designers on staff. So we had plan. Then you turn the page and it said plant, which they have a 14-acre nursery. So they plant, and then you turn the page, and then the final page was the logo, Plantique, and then a landscape. But so you know what I mean? Plan, plant, Plantique. Kind of cool how like not every company has a name that has a 3-step process in there of what they do. So looking for those types of things in when you're working with clients, those don't just happen. Those those sometimes take months and years sometimes. You know, that's not an idea you have to kind of really immerse yourself and be curious and do the work and like try to figure out how do we do an idea that's just not like what everyone else is doing.
Naming is so difficult too.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
I find naming to be like one of the most difficult aspects of, you know, if a new brand is coming or refreshing.
Mhm.
Um, it's always a fun exercise when you get to do it. But yeah, that is amazing how it's like three different,
Mhm.
you know, it's visual, it's also part of their process. That's really cool.
And we did the only one that I did for him that he said he was uncomfortable with was the only time. And I worked with that client for 6 years when I was at the agency that I worked at, RM Squared, Forge Marketing. And it was it was an ad for it said grass hasn't been this good since the 60s.
Eh,
And it just showed like a lawn, and it was a plantique, and it was just, kind of having fun, right? With
yeah,
some of the
little tongue in cheek.
Yeah, and he said like, "Oh man," he said that sounds a little too pro drug, and I said, "Okay." So we went back to the drawing board and we came up with just say no to weed, meaning, weeds in your
Weeds
garden.
in the garden. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
just say no to weed. And then he was like, "All right, I like that. Let's run with that." And then that ran. So we just had, when he went one time he wanted to do an ad for Music Fest, right? It was a
Mhm.
Music Fest promo ad. So I was big on never just wanting to just do like the normal ad. I wanted to kind of do like a thing that would be a little bit entertaining, because people are, they're looking at program books and they really don't want to see your normal ad. So what we did was, for the one, we showed an acorn, and tying back to your music thing, we had you know what an acorn looks like, right? So you picture
Mhm.
an acorn, had a stem that went up, and then a little leaf at the top. It looked like a music note. So
Okay.
proud sponsor of Music Fest. It's an acorn that's going to turn into a tree. But you see what I mean? So the
Yeah, yeah.
Plantique connection with
Yep.
music.
Look
Boom,
at that.
done. He loved it. He was like, "That's fantastic. Run it." And then we'd run it like in other things. If he was a sponsor of like, Symphony Hall, or if he was a sponsor of, a music, school that was doing a concert or something, that's the ad that we would run. We would do the little acorn with the music note. I'll have to see if I can dig that out of the archives, and I'll show it here
Yeah,
since
I'd
we're
like
talking
to
about
see
it.
it. It
Yeah.
sounds really neat.
So let me ask you this. What is your creative process? How do you work? How do you uncover your ideas?
It depends on what step of the creative process I'm in. I like to start with visual research to see what's out there.
Mhm.
Because then I know where my client needs to enter the market, what they need to look like, what they'll be competing with. Um, So I like to start with visual research. And then I go to my sketchbook and I spend the most time there just sketching out all the ideas, getting through the first ones, and
Okay.
then getting to, the ones where you're like, aha, there it is. And then I'll render it, I'll bring it into Illustrator,
Mm-hmm.
vectorize it, and then I'll think of, okay, what colors should I apply? Because I work in black and white for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And then I
Mm-hmm.
apply a couple different color palettes depending on what I want to see. That still takes me a couple shots. I never nail it on the first, rarely.
Mm-hmm.
I have
Mm-hmm.
before, but it's part of the process. So after I apply the color palette, then I have oh yeah, I have to, so there's visual research. I also do typography exploration too, because that sometimes if I have to use typography within a logo, I want to make sure that that typeface really exudes the energy of what we're trying to communicate to. And that's fun.
Mm-hmm.
I really love diving in,
Mm-hmm.
to the archives, seeing what you can dig up, see what hasn't been used in a couple years.
I don't think people realize how much goes into this.
Yeah.
People who don't do it, you know what I mean? Like what we like, people who work in it don't. They just think it's like, making pretty pictures or something. There's a lot that goes into this. It really does. There really is. Especially
Yeah.
with. So what happens? So how do you how do you determine, if you're working on a logo, let's say, how do you determine, ooh, that's the one right there? Let's develop, like, what happens? How do you make that? You waiting for like
Well,
lightning bolts to come out of the sky? Like what? Like confetti to jump off the page? Like what do you?
that's the one. Well, sometimes you do have that's the one, but most times when I'm pitching to clients, I'm pitching at least three logos, right?
Wow.
So you
Okay.
have three, that's the one, but for different reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's a committee you're presenting to, you want to have a safe option. And then if you want to push that a little bit further, then that's the second option. And then the third option is something off, the off beaten path and something
Yeah.
that would be a little risky to a board. But
But then how do you determine which one you tell them or that you like? Because what if they say, well, which one do you like?
I usually present it at first. Yep, I lead with it. And
Okay.
that's
Okay.
psychologically, they're like, wow, that is really good. And then
Because
everything
there's
else.
kind of an unwritten rule out there that says don't ever present something to a client that you don't want them to choose because that is the one they will choose. And then you're stuck with it. I've had that happen
Absolutely.
already. I've had that
Yeah,
happen.
you have
Yeah.
to get behind everything you put out there 100%. So
Mm-hmm.
if they're choosing, the one you don't like, then it shouldn't be presented.
Right. Okay.
So
Do you ever do something where I've had this happen so many times and it's funny. You do something and it just works like immediately. And then you almost don't believe it. And then like spend another 3 days trying to better it, and then you can't. And you
yeah,
real like I remember I did this one logo the one time. It was for this company. It's no longer around. It's called Cocoon. Um, and we did the logo, and the owner of the agency comes by and he's like, "Oh, that's awesome." He's like, "That's for Cocoon, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "That's great." I'm like, "Yeah, I just did it in 5 minutes." He's like, "Okay, well, what's the problem?" I'm like, "Well, shouldn't I take longer? Like, shouldn't it take longer?" He's like, "No, it's," and then so he left, right? And what did I do? I went back in to try to like make it better because I didn't trust my own ability that I could do something that fast, right? So then he
yeah,
comes back like a couple hours later. He's like, "Wait, you're still working on Cocoon?" I'm like, "Yeah, I was trying to make it better." He's like, "Well, how'd that go?" I'm like, "It didn't work." He's like, "Yeah, the logo is done. It's done. That's what we're presenting." So you know what I mean? It's just funny how sometimes that happens, and we don't. Paula Shear has a quote where she says, um, you know, she did the Citibank logo like at the lunch, like that they were having Citibank and Travelers was merging, and she had the solution for the design. She sketched it out on a napkin, and it's
yep,
ultimately what they used within 10 minutes. And she said, it's not that it took me 10 minutes to do it; it took me 34 years to be able to do it in 10 minutes. So you have to look at it like that. It takes a
Absolutely. And
long
I feel
time to do something that quick, right? It took a long time for that pie baker to make, or that baker to make that pie that day. I wish I tried to go see if I could like find the person who made that pie. I never could, just to kind of put a final point on that. They couldn't figure out. The restaurant tried to I would have had to known what day I was there, which I did know that, but they have multiple bakers, but they couldn't figure out. I would have loved to have talked to that person and interviewed him for the, or her for the column. But
yeah,
so,
I'd like
okay.
to shake their hand.
So, I mean, I'm not telling you something you don't know, but our business, advertising and marketing, it's continuing to change, evolve, and grow, like literally as we're sitting here talking. What are your thoughts about AI and what AI is going to be? Are you concerned about it? Or because I'm, in my room with my students, like I haven't really been going down that road. Like I don't want to freak them out already, like where this stuff can go when I'm trying to get them to be confident in their skills. There's just something about it. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I mean, try not to fear it, right? It's already been happening. It's being integrated into our day-to-day life, whether we know it or not. Um, I guess from a designer standpoint, it can really streamline your processes a little faster than doing it manually.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be replacing objects and images or adjusting lighting, that's pretty neat. Photoshop has, and Illustrator, they all have AI functionalities within that software.
Yep.
Um, you know, AI within software is just to speed it up and streamline the process. I think it's going to help our job for sure. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think it'll ever replace us. You're still going to need a human to understand the situation and to have compassion and empathy and offer multiple solutions. I think that I don't know. Like I said, I don't think AI is going to necessarily replace stuff. It'll enhance our job.
Okay.
So
All right. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's here. And it's here to stay.
yeah. So, and just like anything, be an early adopter, try
Mhm.
to learn about it as much as you can, and just stay with it because, like you said, it's not going anywhere. So, it's only going to transform into our
Mhm.
everyday lives, whether we like it or not.
What's something that you wish you would have known when you were starting out that you know now?
Um, hmm, how much I would not be designing.
Oh,
You know what I'm saying? Like,
right,
as
I do. Mhm.
because you start out and I mean, you're a little design machine,
Yep.
constantly turning out, whether it be logos, whether it be brand standard guides, whether it be, manipulating photos, the churn is really
Mhm.
there. And you just love it. But then I would say, yeah, I didn't realize, that I would be designing less. Um, but yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I was at the morning call and I was in the copy and layout department, back in the days of proportional wheels and T-squares and markers, Photoshop wasn't even around. Um, I miss those days. Just, with my group, you know, telling stories and jokes and working on paste up this is when we would like use like paste up books to like for clip art and run them through a waxer. you know uh it was like all the old school stuff that now just happens automatically, but you put music on and you're talk. I miss that aspect. But then as you grow and you get better, right, the better you get, what tends to happen is then they want to put you in charge of leading other people who are designers. So that like is kind of what led me down the road of ending up being a creative director. So then I loved the aspect of helping young designers grow and find their voice. You know,
I
that
think you
that's
have the best job being a professor right now.
well, yeah, well, and then that's what led to teaching, because creative direction is teaching. It is. It's working with all different levels of designers. You can't, you have to kind of coax them out of their comfort zones,
Mhm.
getting them to see the potential in themselves and the greatness in themselves. That's all things I did as a creative director that I'm now doing as a teacher at LCTI. And you know, because you came into the class and you got to see it and experience it, right?
You have my dream job. That's what I want to do when
Really?
in
Okay.
the later years. I'm
Well,
not done doing what I'm doing yet, but in the
yeah.
later
Okay.
years, absolutely. I think there's so much positive energy
Yeah.
comes with hanging out with young and inspiring minds. They
100%. Yep.
they say both good and bad, the ideas, the creativity, the unfiltered creativity is
Mhm.
it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I get to see some it's a privilege. I get to see some amazing stuff um on a daily basis. And just watching these guys and girls you know, getting them to come outside of their comfort zone a little bit. And then when they come outside the comfort zone and they do something that they didn't think they could do, and then to just see that, you just watch their confidence soar. And just, now they're because anytime you expand your comfort zone, it doesn't shrink back. It stays expanded. And then you just keep getting them to I spend a lot of my time trying to just, let them know how talented they are. This one guy just recently, one of my students started submitting these sketchbook assignments of these buildings that he's drawing. They're just little freehand kind of sketches.
Okay.
They are phenomenal. They could be in a book right now. And I was saying to him, I'm like, you got to keep this. You got to go down this road. Like you're really good at this. They're like they look. I'm telling you, if I'd show you one, you'd be like, oh, what professional artist did this?
Yeah.
This is a student in 10th
And they
grade.
can't see it. They can't
No,
see it.
no, they
It's so
can't. I
yeah.
can because
You're
I'm older
lucky. You're
and I
lucky.
can.
You get to see all this talent and say, hey,
So my
check
job is
this
to get
out.
them to believe in themselves. That's my job.
Yeah.
That,
Because
that
then they'll be able to submit more to the Addies,
hmm
you
and
know.
move on with their career. Teach them that like they can become their own person, their own. There's so many different avenues that they can go down now that weren't available to me 40 years ago when I graduated from that program.
Doesn't that
It,
make you feel good
oh yeah, to be
that,
able to come
that
full
things grow,
circle.
evolve, and these kids have access to more than we had access to? I
hmm
think that's great.
and
It's
I get to
showing them.
bring in people from the outside that are in it, that are like doing it, like you. I had Sarah Dams the other day came in.
Yeah, I saw
Um,
that.
yeah, people like Kate Hughes. I had her on the
Yeah.
podcast. She came in. I think she's coming in March 8th. So I'm just trying to expose them to as many different voices and perspectives and attitudes as possible. To just because I didn't have that when I was in. No one came to talk to my class. No one. And I
Yeah.
really feel like that was a missed opportunity. So tell me about something that you think people would be surprised to know about you.
Um, Gosh, I don't know. I'm
That's a
pretty
tough one, right?
lame.
Hmm?
I said I'm pretty lame. I just I run a business, a creative business. What is surprising and shocking? Um,
All right, let me ask you
I'm
this.
pretty
Tell
lame.
me,
I like to ski. I like to do
okay,
jumps,
really? Ski jumps?
terrain park with my boys, Emmett and Eli.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Tell me about the Easton Murals project that you're
Oh,
involved in.
oh yeah. So that was started by Chaz Hampton and Tom D'Angelo. And that initiative was to just beautify our city, and use local artists and not necessarily Lehigh Valley artists, also Philly artists as well. And it gives people an opportunity to have Easton as their canvas. So I
Mhm.
worked with Chaz and Tom to come up with the logo, and then a place to submit, a call for artists, to
Right.
go to submit work, portfolio, and request, supplies is what they needed. And then Chaz and Tom would reach out and align kind of the projects for Easton Murals to beautify our city here in Easton.
I've seen a bunch of them. They're amazing. They're
They
absolutely amazing.
Did you
Yeah.
see the most recent one? It's on 10th and Northampton. Um, it's the West Ward, and
I don't know
it's
if that.
turquoise and red, and it's on the side of like a neutral color building. It really pops. I love it.
Okay. You'll have
I
to
love
send me a picture of that so I can put it on here so we
it.
can see it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I will. Mhm.
Easton is I'm very impressed with Easton and what they've done in the past couple years. I mean, it is really on the move. Go downtown, the restaurants that are down there, the riverfront. I mean, just all the just the development that's been happening. Um,
Have
really
you been
cool.
to the new Time downtown?
Have not. No.
Oh, it's a rooftop restaurant. It's
Mm,
so good.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you'll
I
have
love
to check
Easton.
it out.
Easton is cool. I like the vibe. Like the vibe there. The river and 611 and just it's just Northampton Street and just the State Theater. I mean, just so much, just so much
Farmers
cool.
market, the public
Oh, the
market.
farmers market. Yeah. Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah.
So what's in the future for Sarah Clark? What's the next 3 to 5 years look like for you? What do you hope for? What do you want
Um,
to achieve?
I hope my son gets his license so I don't have to drive him around all over the Lehigh Valley.
Okay. Uh,
That's one of them. I guess professionally, it's to make more connections with like-minded clients. To me, I love, like you said, when it clicks, working
mhm,
with somebody that just where you guys align both visually, artistically, business-wise,
Yep.
objectives, all of that. Um, just finding more of good fits is great. And also like doing more educational stuff, both like Kudu giving back and taking on more interns regularly.
Mhm.
I would like
Mhm.
to do that. And then also taking my team and I to do more conferences around sure marketing, advertising, but then also what their focus is, So
Mhm.
maybe some design conferences, maybe some, creative conferences that we go to. Um, so yeah, I see growth in education, both giving internally and externally, giving back and then taking in. Um, yeah,
Okay.
and like I said, business development, of course, but the like-minded clients aspect is really great because, like I said, it doesn't feel like work, right? It's just
Right.
something
Right.
that you're helping others do. And I mean, that's great. It's what you're doing right now. You're helping grow our creative youth, and I'm helping businesses align their goals through messaging and utilizing the creative workforce to communicate to the general public. So
Mhm. Mhm. Last
so
question. What's the
yep.
best piece of advice you received? Best piece of advice you ever received?
No guts, no blue chips. My grandfather told me that, and it's essentially, you have to take a risk to win big. So take those risks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
How about you? Do you have a quote that comes to you that
A
you
quote
remember?
that comes to me.
Mhm.
Well, right now, I think there was a student in my class that said to me, he said, "Mr. Childs, what are three things you wish you could get our generation to understand?" And I thought, whoa, that's a heavy question, but I
Yeah.
had three things immediately, and I said, you know what? Here they are, right here. Number one, it gets better.
Mhm.
Okay. Number two, have the courage to hold yourself accountable. And number three, believe in yourself. If those are the only three things that I could
Great
impart,
advice.
you'll be fine. And he was like, wow, it's pretty heavy. But like, imagine trying to tell a 15-year-old that it gets better, right? You just can't possibly fathom that. It's like, because it's a tough time. It's a tough age. You're coming out of junior high school, your first year in high school, the cell phones, all the stuff that they have to deal with just how, things are now. And they probably can't perceive that this will get better. It always gets better, no matter what you're doing. It gets better. You have to believe that. And just with it, and even for adults too, it gets better. And I said, have the courage to hold yourself accountable, which, means like, don't just put things that aren't happening for you on other people. You have to take control of what's going to happen to you. Own that process. And man, just getting them to believe in themselves, to believe that, like, I can do this. I can do this. I mean, because if you don't believe it, no one else is going to buy into the fact that, they're not going to buy into it if you don't believe it first.
And I think at that age too, belief is like a huge piece of
Yeah.
growth,
Yeah.
because they're constantly doubting themselves, especially
Yep.
when you're a budding artist.
Oh, and artists do that now.
Oh,
I mean, still do
I'm
that
not good
anyway.
enough. I'll
Right.
never be good enough. This sucks. I
Hmm.
suck. You have to work through it. Just keep going. You'll get there. It reminds me of the Ira Glass quote.
Oh, yeah.
You'll
Hmm.
get there. You have the taste, you have the eye for it, but your ability doesn't necessarily match your vision. So just keep going.
I show that video to the class almost like
Yeah,
within the first month. Yeah, it's great. It's
it
awesome.
is. It
Yeah.
is. Well, that's great advice, Bill.
Well, I want to thank you for doing this. Um, just thank you for just, coming into the class and being so open to and sharing your journey and your thoughts and your work. And, I do believe that it's important to give back. Like if you can, if you can, send the elevator back down, you get up there, send it back down for other people. So I applaud that, that you're doing that and keep doing that, especially with, if you can bring interns in and giving them experience and setting them on the path. But I do want to thank you for your time today and this conversation. Um, I'm glad that we got to reconnect after we first met at Mosaic. This has been cool, and I'm glad we're friends.
Yeah, Bill, thanks for having me. The pleasure is all mine. I appreciate the chat and the coffee, and I hope to do this again.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it, and be well. Okay.
you too. Take
Take
care.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, Ad Yackers. Hope you enjoyed it. Because we have many more great conversations planned and guests lined up ready to yak it up. Ad Yak is sponsored and produced by ASR Media. Theme song was written and performed by Dan Ross. Ad Yak is the official podcast of the AAF Greater Lehigh Valley Ad Club. Stay hungry, stay humble. Till next time.
This episode of Ad Yack is rated O for, oh man, that was good.